Hello and God bless you. This is Ellen Mongan with our husband, Deacon Pat. Hey, Pat.
Dear.
That Deacon Dear show is Go Tell the World. We're doing Go Tell the World today because I feel like everyone has some message to tell the world. Now, you have one in your heart that you're holding back on and you haven't yet pronounced it out of your mouth to say, I want to tell the world. And then you share with other people and they have their message. We can learn something from everyone and everyone can learn something from us.
Amen.
So we have today on the show a great man of God that is actually doing something for the youth. Now, we all know that my heart is for the youth. We have 8 children, Deacon Pat and I, and I want the youth to be as joy-filled and alive as I was as a kid. I was so alive as a child that I just remember the other day in college, they would say to me, "What do you want?" And I would go, "I'm high on life," but I really meant life in Christ. So I was always excited about the next day and the sun rising. Almost more yellow today for the sunshine. And I think that every child should have some kind of purpose. So today we have a man whose last name is Purpose. He's calling the show Purpose on his shirt, but he's going to introduce himself. His name is Nick. He is from all over the West. So here we go, Nick. How you doing today?
Hey, my friends, what's up? Thanks for sharing your audience with me. Yeah, folks, my name is Nick Marmolejo. I'm just honored to be here.
And so where are you living, Nick? In Texas, where I was telling Deacon Pat. Are you in El Paso?
Yeah.
We have friends.
We currently relocated to West Texas, not quite El Paso, to Lubbock, Texas, actually, home of Buddy Holly and Cotton.
Okay.
We know where that is. My father worked for the Army, and he was stationed at Fort Bliss for a year. You know where that is?
I'm familiar.
El Paso, Texas.
Yeah, we thought El Paso. We have shout out to the people you know in El Paso, which is Shavana Floyd, who is a dear friend. She's been on the show before herself, and ours is military. So, Nick, we brought you on the show today because my heart is, like I said, for the youth. And I keep saying, I kind of network with a lot of people. I say like this: strong families, strong nation, right? And a lot of people are unable for some reason to bring forth what they need for the children, or maybe the children's hearts are blocked and don't hear it. So Nick his message to the world, Go Tell the World, is to help children to find purpose. So you want to tell a little bit about that, but first tell about your family, because I don't want to be amiss, because Pat's the deacon and he always goes to my wife is Ellen.
Yeah, absolutely. Really just doing the work. It's one of those things where you have both the insight and the experience, therefore really both the authority and the privilege to share on a specific topic. The whole idea of launching my book, Where's My Compass, came from a time with my son. As a matter of fact, I was reading to him one of those books that, it's a children's book, right? But as a parent or as an educator, you pick it up and you realize, hey, the message in this book is actually for me. And so that's where the idea spurned from it. And, it had me revisit my time as a former teacher. And now when I look back, I say to myself, hey, there's plenty of teachers who are burnt out, right? Who are lacking and just missing a clear purpose and passion, and no fault of their own, right? And kids who are just disengaged and really yearning for some type of mentorship. So it was at that point when I realized the need for it. I felt the Lord calling, and so I decided it's time to launch the book, launch the message, and really start helping those group of people.
I think that's great. What do you think, Deacon Pat?
Well, yeah, as you're talking, we actually did an interview with another group who is a little more focused, because it's for Catholic youth, called Adventure Catholic.
These are my co-hosts.
And they do retreats and things for youth in terms of trying to help them feel confident about themselves and build leadership skills, and again, giving them purpose. So there's other people out there doing that, and it's so needed when we see what's going on in youth today.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reminded, I was at South by Southwest EDU, one of the largest education conferences, a few weeks back, as a matter of fact. And one of the things I was most encouraged about was 4 takeaways, one of them being actually family. And so when I think about our conversation here, I ask myself, who are really the first teachers to children? And to me, it's my belief that parents, if equipped and if possible, they should be able to be that to their kids. And then also there's the support of having schools, whether you're public or private. And so just really encouraged about collective action around purpose, that has to do with also just making sure that we're empowering families.
And don't you think, really, if you think back on your life, I can think back on my life, and I write like you do about subjects for children that teach the adults too. But the thing is, I remember being the new girl every year. Now, Pat was a new girl, new boy a couple times. I was always a new girl. And it is tough if you don't have that. Some people feel it's really good to have one stable family that lives in Idaho the rest of their life, or one stable family who just is Floridian. But for me, I went everywhere, and that gave me the boldness to be who I am and to get out and have confidence. I don't know what the better choice is. You two may have some wisdom on that, but everything plays into it. And then you think about, what was your peer group like? That's two subjects I've gone to address: peer group, and then being the new girl, or being the person that's always been in the same.
In my experience, because I did move around some too, is that for me, I tended to be an introverted person, and so it certainly didn't make me more outgoing necessarily moving around the country. Especially, I came from a small town and in the Midwest, and we went to El Paso, Texas, then we went to Hawaii, then we went to Florida. So very different cultures. You know, I think sometimes we can think in terms of our country, because we're all in America, that the cultures are the same, but they're not. There are significant cultural differences as you move to different areas around the country that you have to adjust to, and kids have to adjust to, and the schools they have to adjust to. So, you know, looking at some kids do well with travel, some kids not so much, and how do you help those that are not doing well, I guess, would be an important question, right?
So what do you?
Yeah, you know, it's so true. And it actually reminds me of really the hero that I'm seeing emerging in education. And that is, you know, students who are neurodiverse, specifically, you know, kids with autism in particular, because how often do they have to go around, you know, masking to blend in? And what I've learned after talking with plenty of experts and families on the topic is that really it's not so much about the kid adapting to the environment, it's about the environment adapting to the child, you know? And I'm really encouraged by that, because it speaks to just being inclusive. And I'm sure you've learned this along the way of, you know, our words, our actions, they're either pulling people apart or they're bringing them together. And I'm just really encouraged about, like I said, the hero of not only the book that I'm writing, but I'm seeing it emerge elsewhere. Other people are talking about it too. And I think the Lord has his hand in all of those conversations.
Well,
I think because I'm also a retired physician, is I would see children, because I was in family medicine, who were referred by teachers because they're autistic, they're hyperactive, they have attention disorder deficit, and often on the spectrum of normal, that the teachers were having a hard time with this particular child, but the child was really normal. And so it was a little more difficult. And so they wanted some kind of diagnosis and treatment for somebody else. And I don't have any statistics in terms of how often that happened, but I saw that fairly often. And then, you know, in terms of some kids, and I can remember one child who was sent, oh, this child's a problem by the school system. And then I met the parents, and literally, I'm not kidding, both parents were mentally ill.
Oh, that's bad.
And so
they're raising the child.
and for me,
Or
it was
slightly.
like, oh, what can I do to help this child who's going to be in this very, very difficult environment? And as you know, as an educator, that's really a tough one to deal with. Not easy.
It is. Is it okay if I share a statistic with you that I learned recently?
I told you come with statistics. I did.
Yeah, 29%. A recent study was done, a national survey on, they surveyed students in public schools in particular who felt that their schools are preparing them for career and life success. 29% said that they believe that.
Wow.
And when I look at that, I ask myself then, well, if that's the case, and if that's the level of awareness that, you know, most kids have arrived at, then I also ask, are we serving every population even at an even lower rate than that? You know, if we were to poll those families, those neurodiverse families, would they agree with that 29%? And would it be more like 10?
Sure.
And so that was a stark number for me to hear, kind
Yes.
of a gut punch. But it really fuels and it just it encourages me. I'm a little bit obsessed about the topic currently, but in a good way. I think the Lord's just put it on my heart.
And
Yeah.
don't you think that as we're saying, we're speaking about different things. One is the environment that they're in, and the parents, the peer group, and the school. And you said all the different places that you live are different. So I think that peer group will play one of the major things, and the fact of their purpose, they could feel like they're the loser. You're just a loser. You're just like, I know one child that got pantsed in the bathroom at a little age. It affects the child. They little stupid things that we just, in our age, we didn't do that because I was a Catholic schoolgirl. But I'm saying that there were things that happened in your life and your back, like you think about in your life, was there someone that actually made you soar or someone that made you crash and burn?
Yeah, and I
Your peer
think
group or a teacher.
and I'm sure you've seen this in terms of as you get older, one of the things even in counseling adults is that in trying to figure out with kids, because often even our own kids wouldn't tell us all that's going on in their heads. And yet there are things that happen to us that we interpret in a childlike way. And so as we get old, and those things can be carried into our adulthood. And so we need to step back and say, okay, this is how I interpreted things as a child. I'm an adult now. Can I reinterpret that? And so, and I'm sure that goes on with kids in a very young age where something happens, but then when they get to be teens, can we help them reinterpret maybe their childhood?
You're hitting on something extremely relevant, and that is the idea of like reinventing yourself. Adults do it all the time. That's the reality, whether they're looking at college or a career change. I believe there's studies out there that say, 1 in every 7 people does a career change over 10 times in their life. And so if that's the case, the other thing I look at and ask myself is, when I'm looking at schools, they are the place. I define even public schools as the place to learn purpose. Sure, academics matter, and they drive funding and they drive opportunities, resources that schools get. But what good are the academics if kids are going to choose paths that aren't fulfilling or rewarding and don't actually bring out the best of what they have in the world, And so you hitting on that reinvention, a teacher sat me down my 12th grade year of high school and she said, "Hey, Nick, I just want to let you know that you can always reinvent yourself." And that was all the permission I needed to head into college, a new man, a young man who had a new lease on life, and so I appreciate you shining the light on that.
And Dr. Lehman, I don't know if you know, he's a parenting educator. He's also a good man. At least he was in the old days, in my days. And he said one teacher took interest in him as well. And that he was like the dumb kid, but he was brilliant, but he was like not the dumb. I guess that's terrible to say. Yeah. I take that back. He was Dr. Lehman, who's brilliant, but he actually got the energy and desire to go forward. It takes one, don't we? It does take one person. I tried really with my kids to just keep encouraging them all day long to a point of that they all encourage their kids as well. But you can't just spend your whole life that someone's going to make you feel like you're the top of the world.
One of the things, Nick, that maybe you could shine a light on, give us a perspective on, because when I was growing up, and certainly when our kids were growing up, yes, they went to private school, but at the same time, it seemed like the environment was different and culturally in terms of teachers and parents working together. Now, what I see on the news and to some degree with our kids who were, sending their kids to public schools, and that they aren't always working together. That almost, and certainly it seems that, and you see this in the news in terms of parents feeling like the school system has become the enemy.
Just not.
You know, that I love this question, by the way. And
I
really what I would
probably
say
can't
is,
afford, but
yeah, no, what I would say is that by large, the educators that I come across, they are in it for the kids. They are passionate about helping kids grow in all ways. Now, the other thing I'll share is my son has actually been in private school from the age of 2 until now. We put him in transitional kindergarten. And it was not a matter of knowing that a public school could serve him. It was more a matter of finding the right public school and
Amen.
finding the right teachers and community. And also trusting that I know I can teach him things like reading and math early and have early, discussions on faith so that when he steps into a public school, he's very equipped. Now, on that end, the one thing that I hear from teachers, leaders at every level is it's a time issue. There's competing priorities, just time is so compact, especially in public schools. So there's certain things that are outside of the control of educators, I would say, or they at least feel that they're not empowered to make those kind of decisions.
Mhm.
And it's more of a system issue. And so I'm like fueled by this because I think we've been looking at it all wrong. It's typically looked at what is our productivity or results? And you backtrack it, you say, well, okay, well, first, what is our priorities? But how do we know what our priorities is? We have to know our purpose, not just organizational or individual purpose. So
Right.
there's the flow. They've been doing it backwards. And so just reframing that and then giving educators and teachers and parents the power back to make decisions and have ownership over what they're choosing to do. So I hope that provides a little bit of insight on what you were asking.
Sure. And yeah, I think, um, looking at the numbers that you typically know, tests and whatever, is ultimately is, and even I thought about this a lot in terms of as an educator of physicians, is that it's not as much what happens there in their education uh, program, but what do they become out there when they in the world and they're really what kind of doctor are they then? What kind of success is there for, as you're pointing to students rather than just some numbers in terms of the thinking more long term, I guess would be, something I wonder about and whether people actually do that in terms of, okay, yeah, there are parameters we can measure on the way, but ultimately is, as you say, what's the goal is for every person to find their purpose, right? That's what you're saying. And so you have to look at where they are maybe 5 years after school out they graduate or 10 years, and keeping track of that kind of information, then go back and maybe revamp your curriculum or the way you approach things. Does that happen in the educational system?
It does. And, I think it's long been looked at as a matter of a service, a delivery of like a completion point. But and I think you'll understand this and appreciate it as well, is that I think the real goal is not only purpose, but creating and nurturing lifelong learners.
Amen.
Because when you become an adult, you're continuing to grow. You choose to do things. No one's going to force you to do that.
Right.
And so that internal compass to know what to focus on and know what to learn and grow in, it has to be there. And we see all the symptoms and the stats that show that people aren't growing. And so we just really have to backtrack and look at schools and see how do we completely turn that around, so that kids step into college and stop looking at it so much as I'm gonna figure it out, and more in terms of I know what God's calling me to do. Now here's my focus so that I can get it done. And I'll trust in him along the way to inform that process.
And so now I have another question. I'm the question answer to, what exactly do you do? Like what would you describe purpose? Like to me, nowadays, they're actually talking a lot about how great it is to be a trade as well as a college educated person, which I think is a great thing. Because like I went to college and I was top student in my high school, but it wasn't for me. There as a Catholic school where there's drugs, drinking, and sex, and I just felt like I was lost there. So I became a stewardess. To me, that was like my niche, right? I was good at that. Having children, I never based that. I thought that was my niche as well. So to me, being a mother is a high calling, and to be a person that feels fulfilled in what they're doing is good. But when you go into schools, what are you trying to aim for? Like, it's a good question.
Yeah. So one is always defining purpose. It's what we call a high concept. So for example, when I'm writing my book, Where's My Compass, I was looking at another book by Matt de la Pena. It's called Love. And
Okay.
when you ask a person, right, what is the definition of love, you end up with multitude of answers, right? And so with that being the case, purpose is the same. You can find a definition in Merriam's or Webster's, right? But when you ask a person on the street, that's entirely different. So I typically define it as purpose is the best of what you're built upon to serve others with. So there's the element of always serving others, and not so much in a way that forgets about you. You're equipped. You have been called to do something to serve those folks. So it's a mixture of the skills that we acquired, the experiences that shape us, as well as the roles that we tend to play. Right. And for me, even though I'm not an educator in the classroom, I learned that I could still be a teacher in other ways. And so, I think when you have that kind of compass, you really can't go wrong. And God ensures that you can't go wrong with the paths that you pursue. He'll always course correct, and he'll make the best of it. So
I think that's very good. I think it's important. What do you see on the other end of the spectrum when you see the kids that don't have purpose? And then how would you address that to the parents? Parents are watching to listen up, because if you have a kid that just seems like he's like, it's another day and I have life isn't worth living, and that's a red flag right there. And it's also a, breaker.
And we
Lift
see
it up.
that, the increasing rate of suicide among kids because they don't feel like they have any purpose in life.
yeah, and you hit on the number one thing that we don't want to see, right? And a lot of people will blame it on COVID in particular as being the thing that caused the uprise in that, but it really is a lack of purpose and how do you say mentorship, that kids were left to fend for themselves, and in some cases, that just turned out very poorly, right? There are some kids certainly who thrived in a digital setting of learning, and then there are plenty of kids who they were yearning for that connection piece, that mentorship.
Yeah, connection, it seems to me.
Yeah,
In
100%. And the other thing is I see though, and because I've been in classrooms, even though I'm not in the classroom, a district, they often will welcome me in to walk their hallways and meet their teachers. And when I step into a classroom, something I'll notice are heads down, every kid's on their phone. There's just a lack of respect for teachers. And the reality is too, is I don't so much put it on the kids, it's just everyone is mentally exhausted and drained. And I know that purpose is that piece that it fuels passion, it fuels all the other things. And so I'm just, again, so honored that y'all have made the space for this conversation, because it's so often that the things that we talk about are they're entirely missed. We focus so much on things like passion, which are emotional based. And what we're talking about is a compass. It gives us direction. So I think our kids need that.
Yeah. Well, and it appears to me, we have this lack of connection within the family that and we've allowed electronics or whatever, even peers. I mean, for example, when our kids were growing up, Sunday you had to be there every meal, unless there was a good reason. You had to be at that meal at our house, and of course it was easier in a sense because we didn't have cell phones like
That's
we
true.
do today. And
Cell
so,
phones.
but I'm encouraged some because you see on the media some push to disconnect
Mhm.
from media,
Sure.
pushing people to, put the phone down more and whatever, and to connect as a family. And so, that I think is part of a big part of the problem.
And I think it's great that we're putting some of those measures into place because, you know, we're guiding this next generation. And also, and I know that if there are a lot of parents out here watching, we know that there's a big difference between, you know, putting barriers and rules in place and then also a kid choosing on their
Right.
own to not pursue something that's not good for them. And so I also think we need to make sure we balance it with getting our kids hyper aware of the problems that are coming at them in the world. And then given the solution is certainly that compass, that purpose piece. That way they know what to eliminate, most importantly, because with competing distractions, whether we're talking about technology or peers, you have to know how to filter that out, you know, otherwise you become consumed by it.
Yeah, yeah. I think that we would obviously say that, and what I always taught my kids is, I don't care what field you go into, what you think is important, whether it's a trade, whether it's going to college. I never pushed them to go into medicine. The constant mantra that we said to them is, figure out what God wants you to
That's
do,
right.
and you're going to be happy.
That's right. And some of you change, like you said, you make it change a career, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I asked Nick some more questions. We're talking to Nick over from Texas, but not El Paso, near Lovelock. And we want to ask him about his book. He's writing a new book to help parents as they read the book with their children. The parents learn something too. And it's called
What's the title of your book?
The Compass.
Where's my compass?
I love the
Where's my-
title. I do. That's how I can say it. Where's my compass? And so what would we learn from that book and why should we buy it? And where can we get it when it's on the market?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, honored to have written it, by the way. And it's really about a 10-year-old boy with autism who goes on a journey to find his missing compass, and he instead discovers the secret to purpose. And so it's really a frame of putting the kid in the position of being the teacher and also shining a light on non-traditional work and the value of it, knowing that there are other career paths and choices outside of just college.
Mhm.
And so, you know, having spoken to plenty of families who have children, young children, especially with autism, I know they've been encouraged by it because it really just hits on the value that we have as humans, as individuals. It speaks on inclusivity. So, you know, it's just been a joy, a true joy, because God put it on my heart, as you asked earlier. You know, if my son had autism, and I would just say I've taught plenty of students with autism, and that's what I think God planted that seed many years ago. And so I'm just honored to have written it.
Oh, yeah.
One of-
It's
one
such
of-
a need. It's such a need.
Yeah, and I think it's not the same thing, but in some ways it's similar, is taking care of a Downs child. And we had friends who had a Downs child,
The elders.
and they were very bright, intelligent people, and they just work, and she is so functional. And yet I would see, as a doctor, older Downs children, because in the past, and I'm sure that's the way it was tended to be approached with autism, is to almost put them in a corner and ignore them. And so this is so important to see that, and now we do have more and more public examples like Elon Musk, and you know, in terms of people that we can point to and say, look, no, this is a human being who can be successful. It's something and have a purpose.
100%. You know, and it reminds me of the movie the movie Rain Man, as a matter of fact, when it was first written several decades ago, it almost wasn't produced and put out because Hollywood saw it as it didn't follow the typical hero's journey of having a solution and the hero, quote unquote, being fixed. And that was one of the things that that God put on my heart to just wrestle with for a while and make sure that I sought good advice on how to approach that, because ultimately the boy in this book, he is the hero, he is the teacher. And there's also the reality that parents run into of, you know, this is the life that we have, the child that God's blessed us with. And from there, we're gonna do everything that we can to equip our child and just see that see their life through, and be grateful for that as well. And so it's been a blessing, and I'm happy that you also see that, you know, in other areas too.
Well, I want to mention that parents out there, if the Lord allows the cross in your life, then you got to embrace it. Like Nick is trying to educate people on purpose, but also on handicapped or children are different. And Pat has brought up the downs, but there's also a friend of mine named Ann Shea. She's actually a prayer partner, a good friend, and she had a child that was deaf. You know, everyone else could hear, but her child. And she discovered it when he's 6 months old. He landed on the floor with my Sean playing, and she goes, "I think Jordan's deaf." And I go, "No way, I would not be that aware to think that." And she embraced that cross. He was deaf, and she learned sign as he got older. As a family, they to this day the whole family can still sign and talk about us. We don't know what they're saying, you know. And so she really did embrace it. And every child in the family, she's a large family as well, and she all embraced it. So if God does give you a cross or allows it in your life, I'd say allow.
And
Then
I think you
embrace it.
can view those things as crosses,
Mhm.
which sure they're difficult, but you can also view them as opportunities.
Yes, right.
An
Like
opportunity to grow and to help another person grow.
like the person that Pat talked about with Elsa, Elger, and Bob, because they had Monica and she was their baby, they also decided for Monica's sake, kind of not only Monica's sake, out of the love of their heart, to adopt Jay, who was also in the same.
He was a Downs child. They
he was
adopted a
in
Downs
Japan.
child.
Was he in Japan? And so that he
Yeah.
came to our, we're all in Christian community together. And it was a wonderful experience to see them just love the children and all the family members. I think it does teach, if you have a situation in your home like that, it makes the family gather closer knit together. It really does, and help out and have to give up a lot. But I don't want to let you all talk, but I want to end on this, how to get a hold of you, where they can come speak at their church, or they're on Zoom, or at their anywhere at their school, and an invite. And then lastly, I want to say, if you're listening out here, parents, listen up. This might be one to take notes on. If you were to tell parents, like they have the child that's just going, you know, we know that middle school kids go through a season of being like, there's nothing to do except for I'm going to go play basketball and I'm on the team. But when they get to the down, you know, it's easy to be up. Oh, good, hooray. And then to be down. What would parents do? Like 3 suggestions they could try besides having come to their school and talk.
3 suggestions. Man, that's a great question. I would say to parents is seek your child through the Lord. That means through prayer, praying first, what God's calling them to. And I practice that with my son every night, you know. So just getting to know your kid, especially through him.
Mhm.
I would also ask your kid not so much what they want to be, but what problem they want to solve as they get older. And then the last part is what group of people that they're feeling called to serve. If you do those 3 things, and you'll end up with wonderful answers. And even a 5-year-old would shock you with the kind of things that, you know, the possibilities that open up from there.
Sure.
Well, that's very good. And then we didn't address peer group. What do you think about, what if your kid, now Pat has an answer already, I know. What if your child decides to hang with the bad guy or the bad girl? The one is the wild child, but you love the child and they're in your community. We had that situation a lot where our kids would hang with our kids, and then what do you do?
Yeah, it's a challenge because people would say to us,
it was funny.
we're so glad that our child gets to hang out with yours.
We had the open home. Our
And-
home was
and
always everywhere.
Under my breath, I'm saying, well, I'm not so happy, but but at the same time, because it's, as you know, I mean,
He's got young.
peer groups can have a very detrimental effect on your child, and how do you deal with that? And I know there's no real easy answers. It was a little easier for us because our kids went to
Protected.
a school where we knew all the parents and the kids and knew what was going on.
Or they'd come tell us.
Well, we always used to pray. We know if you want to do something you shouldn't do, you'll find a way. My job is to make it hard for you to do
Sure.
that. And 2 is we're praying that you get found out.
And they did.
And so you're probably not facing that obviously so much yet,
You think that
but
it
you
is
must have
his
seen
life.
that in schools. Because even though we were in a Christian school, I can tell you there were groups that were really good groups,
Mhm.
and there were groups that weren't so good. So, that's always a challenge in terms of how much do you let your kids make mistakes too, right?
Nowadays, like the parents have the play group where they invite, the parents intervene. It's a different kind of world. We had kids would just come over. I mean, neighborhood kids or school kids. But I think nowadays parents plan a play day. I don't even understand, but that sounds good too. They pick the kids and the parents comes with them. And I'm like, okay, then it's different, right? It's a different world. We're old people. We're like 70 and 77. We tell our age because we're proud of it. Because with age comes wisdom and wit.
Absolutely.
So 70,
Absolutely.
like say the wild child decided to befriend your child.
I would like to think my son is perfect, but in reality, he is not himself. So, I'll keep it real. I have a big family, 13 nieces
Okay.
and nephews.
Say that.
And I've been around hundreds of kids as an educator, of course. And so when I think about this, I just say like, hey, are these people, first of all, they likely won't be your friends long term. I maybe have 1 to 2 friends who I've been close knit with for 15 plus years, 15 to 20.
Yeah.
And those I'll never exchange. But for the most part, those people will become acquaintances at best. And so you can't make your decisions based off of them. And generally, are your needs being met? Are you safe around them? And then if you're safe, how do they make you feel? And if they're really battling and making you feel like less of a person and less of what, God's equipped you with, then they're probably not the people you should be hanging around with. So you just got to ask the right questions. I found out you can't convince a kid.
You could not have any home. We did invite, we mainly invited everybody because our house was family friendly and because we had so many kids. And also because we didn't want anybody to feel bad, right? We didn't want anybody to feel
Yeah,
bad.
so
But
yeah,
I oversaw everything.
there's a
Like,
lot of work for
everything.
my wife, but making your home kid friendly,
Then you know what's going
then
on.
you can see your kid interacting with the other people, and you get. So anyway, that's just a suggestion in terms of.
I have enough Legos around my home. I've sent my kid elsewhere. I'll send him to someone else's house. I figured that out. No.
Depends on the kid. Well, so we're gonna close off in a minute and we're gonna say that we're gonna share our.
He's going to share, right?
Well, yeah,
How to get in contact.
on the content, but before we do that, we're gonna do our last words, just our last word, because we always want to take home, like what we take home of the show today. We take home that buy lots of Legos. We take home that educators don't always have all the pieces of the puzzle because they need your help and your child is every child's different and every parent and home is different. So what's your takeoff? Who wants to go first? The show. Okay, go ahead. Sum the show up.
My takeaway from this conversation is that it's really a collective action. It's about resilience, but not any one person has the burden to ensure the success of our kids. It really is about us coming together.
I like that.
This is a statement that's been made by politicians, but there is truth in it, right? It takes a village to raise a child, but it's really takes a family, takes a community to really raise a successful, purposeful child.
And I kind of like what you said about, I don't know, it's something sticks with you after people say it. It's like, does this make you feel afraid when you're with that person? Does it make you feel that less of yourself? That's so important to me because if you work so hard to get your child to feel like God loves them and you love them, and they're a great person, they're going to do something great for God. You don't want some other friend that's like maybe a bully or a person with that has a bad self-image saying to them, "You're no good. I'm better than you." You don't want that. You have to just teach them to draw a line of respect. I've learned this as a people pleaser and just be able to stand up for yourself and what you know is true. And then sometimes you just have to go from they're my friend and the other acquaintance. In the South, we just say, "Bless your heart." Bless your heart. And then you pray for them under your breath because it isn't. Everyone's not going to be compatible with everybody.
Earlier, we talked about being connected. Well, in terms of being connected, you have to spend time together.
That's right.
And 2 is you got to keep some lines of communication going in order to be connected. So
is this the parent? You mean the parent, right?
The parent and between the parent and the child, yes.
Well, I feel blessed that I got to be with these 2 wise old owls, but not one owl, but I'm so blessed to learn. No, I learned when I go on my show with people, I learned so much and I want to just honor Nick for what he's doing. and ask if you tell the audience how to invite you to see them or to Zoom with them or do something, play date. like something, go to the school and just teach us, because parents, don't be embarrassed if you don't know everything. No one knows everything. We're not God, right?
Right.
We don't know everything. And then we need a little help from our friends like Nick. So is your purpose?
Yeah. Well, so my book will be released late this summer, so they'll be able to find it on Amazon. Again, it's called Where's My Compass? And LinkedIn is the place, my preferred place to connect with people, especially people in the nonprofit space or educational leaders. It's typically where we have great discussions around how to transform schools to a place that's purposeful for both teachers and educators. So that's how you can find me. Honored to connect. Super easy to chat with as well.
And you say your name, how to, oh, it's on there. Please note his name, because I just have to go, Pat, I can't pronounce his name. And then there is Nick. So Nick, we're glad to have you. We enjoyed it. And we hope that y'all tune into our YouTube channel. It's under Ellen Mongan. That's my name. And it's also many different co-hosts I have on my show. It's not just me talking away, and Deacon Pat comes on with me for Deacon and Deer. They have 12 other co-hosts. And so each one provides a different piece of the puzzle to go tell the world. And so Nick's his focus is mainly on making people have purpose, that can come alive and share their word with the world. So thank you for joining us, Nick, and may God bless you. We'll connect. I want to send you one of my books for your son. And so if you connect on email and tell me a place to send it, I will send you my book, which is called Who Will Wear the Crown. I think you'll like it. It's kind of similar to The Bucket Filler. You'll like it. God bless you.
I greatly appreciate that. It's been an honor.
God bless for us as well. God bless you.
Amen.